Hi, my name is Jacob Packer. I'm an undergrad student here at Penn State studying material science and engineering. And today I get the chance to interview someone I worked with this past summer at Elwood Group.
Hi, my name is Benjamin O'Donnell. I am an alumni from the Penn State Material Science class of 2023, and I currently am a metallurgical engineer at Elwood City Forge Group.
So being a material science alum, what originally got you interested in material science and engineering?
Yeah, so for me, I didn't really have a whole lot of engineers in my life. My dad was in sales, my mom's in PT. But for me, when in high school, I was just really into chemistry. So I thought like, oh, chemical engineering. No, that's just a bunch of math. That was not going to be fun for me. So I kept doing research into it, and I found material science. And I kept looking into it, and I was like, this seems like exactly what I want to do. So
Nice.
kind of got lucky with it.
Yeah, it's definitely a good program. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I do too, especially at Penn State.
Yeah, Penn State has some really good professors.
Mm-hmm.
What made you pick Penn State over somewhere else for the material science or the degree?
Yeah, for me, I mean, one was Penn State's placement. I mean, I think like when I was looking, there were like top 10, top 11 undergraduate material science programs. So that was definitely a big plus for me. In terms of like my personal life, I really liked the town. I liked the idea that everything you needed was like a walk away. So that was a big draw for me too. And it was at that perfect point where it was like still a drive away from home. So like I could go home and see my family if I wanted to over a weekend.
Yeah, I've had pretty much the same experience here. It's been really, really nice. All the professors are amazing, really helpful, really knowledgeable in their fields, and it is nice being able to walk around the campus. And it is a gorgeous campus too. What made you kind of like zone in on metals?
Yeah, that's a good question. Originally, I did want to do polymers. Like I forget if it was required or if it was part of a freshman course. I think it was required to get into MatSE, but you had to write like a little blurb about like what you wanted to do with your material science education afterwards. And I still remember mine. It was like, I want to make a material for like a polymer for slides that doesn't heat up as easily. So in the summer, you don't get like burns when you're trying to go down the slide.
Yeah.
And then I took the polymers class that everyone is required to take sophomore year, and I didn't want to do polymers after that.
I had the same experience with that polymer.
Like at my job right now, I do a lot of work with the aerospace industry, like working on how to forge and heat treat different alloys that are going to go into planes or even into space, and just trying to make all those properties work out. I'd say it does take a pretty specific mind to want to do material science, because like for mechanical engineering, for example, you got to take into account all the forces with your steel bar, how all those are going to play out, and you got to make sure, it's not going to collapse or anything, because that would be bad. But you're already given the properties of that steel bar. You know how much, force, for lack of a better word, it can take. Material science asks, all right, like, well, why can the steel take that much force? Or like, how do we get the steel to be able to take that much force? Like, how do we forge it and heat treat it to give it those properties? So I feel like you gotta keep asking the why, and that makes a good material scientist right there.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it definitely takes a curious person to dig into it.
Yeah.
And I think I like that aspect of it. I think that's really fun, is learning the why.
It's really scientific too. I'd say about like 50-50 engineering and scientific, which is something else I really like about it. Like you still gotta have that engineering mindset of problem solving and critical thinking, but you get to apply like pretty much like pure science to figure out those problems.
Yeah, that's really. While you were here, you had an internship with Elwood. Was that from a career fair that was here, or someone that came into a class?
Yeah, that's actually a really good story. So essentially my sophomore year of college, Elwood came into our class and they did a presentation. And like kind of just like I did today, they came in, talked about, what Elwood does, like, what kind of people they're looking for. Essentially, it gave a presentation about the company as a whole. And I really liked the presentation. I thought everything in there was super cool. But then they came out and they were like, hey, we're not looking for any interns this summer. We got all of our internship slots already filled. We're only looking for full-time. And as a sophomore, I wasn't looking for a full-time position yet.
Yeah.
That would have been really, yeah. But, anyway, after they were done, they sat in the back of the class and they were like, yeah, if anyone has any resumes they'd like to give us, or like if anyone would like an interview, like let us know. And I still gave them my resume and I was like, hey, I'm a sophomore. I know you're not looking for part-time right now or interns right now, but, I thought the presentation was super cool and just wanted to get my resume out there. And they were nice enough to still give me an interview the next day.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I got like a time slot with them. I got to do like the whole actual interview with them, including some technical questions. And the answer was still no. They still didn't have an internship slot open. But, I had their numbers. I had a way to contact them. So throughout that whole year, I just kept giving them updates. I was like, hey, here's what classes I'm taking, or like, here's a project I think is pretty cool, or like, here's how classes are going. And so when that scholarship competition opened up again when I was a junior, they knew exactly who I was. They knew exactly how dedicated I was to trying to get this position at the company. And I ended up winning the scholarship competition and an internship.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Nice, yeah. And then through that internship, is that what made you ultimately choose Elwood later?
Yes. Yeah. Just like the culture was so family oriented. Like I never felt like I was an intern at Elwood, because all the work that they were giving me was either like going out to the shop floor and like actually taking a look at something, or a failure analysis investigation worth $50,000 for the company, which is not something that interns I don't think normally get to do, which was a super cool experience.
What do you typically do? Like, what's your like day-to-day responsibilities and tasks?
So all the Elwood business units, I think, typically break work up differently, but at least at ECF, each metallurgist has their own product line, is what we called it. So there's 4 metallurgists in the metallurgy team at ECF, and we each have our own product lines, like what we're responsible for. So one of my coworkers has automotive, another one has oil and gas, and then me and another coworker, we share aerospace, and I also do a lot of the non-ferrous stuff, so like the nickel and aluminum alloys that we're trying to forge. And so what we do with those is kind of like on the, the beginning of the process and, towards the middle and the end. At the beginning, if a customer comes to us and they're like, hey, we want this new alloy, or we want this alloy tested to different specs you guys have never done before, or even if the geometry is different, because the size affects how it heat treats. That has to come down to metallurgy, and we kind of have to determine, like, all right, how are we going to forge this? How are we going to heat treat this to meet these specs that the customer needs? And then if something goes wrong, which you think we have steel figured out by now, it's been how many centuries, but stuff still goes wrong. And yeah, when that happens, it also goes to metallurgy to figure out, like, all right, like, what in the process caused this? How do we fix it? And how do we prevent this from happening again? So it's kind of like, quality assurance.
With some of those, with some of those issues, what tends to be like the largest contributing factors to the problems that you see?
That's a really good question. Honestly, there's a lot of different factors. I mean, one could just be like the way that the press is operating. Like sometimes the press will go down, or it won't have the tonnage it needs. So that'll either cause us to have to scrap the piece, which is unfortunate, or it won't get the reduction it like needs necessarily to get the properties we're after. It could also be just like the furnace not being consistent. So we have certified furnaces, which are basically, we're guaranteeing that the furnace is within 25 degrees all throughout the furnace, which is pretty good. That's normally for aerospace material. But for the other furnaces, especially during winter or summer when it's really cold or hot outside, sometimes the furnace temperature might be, inconsistent throughout the furnace. So that can cause some spots to be harder, some spots to be softer. It can cause like tensils to fail or impacts to fail. So I'd say just like the inconsistency of the environment is a pretty big factor.
Okay.
And then also the chemistry of the material is another big factor too, because segregation is something that metallurgists since the beginning of time have had to deal with, and we still haven't figured out the best solution for it. And that can either cause us to just, fail chemistry at the top or the bottom of the piece, depending on what element's out, or, just like everything being inconsistent with the furnace and press, it can just cause properties to fail, like your tensils or hardness.
Then when you run into some of these issues, something comes across your desk and saying, this didn't meet this requirement, this didn't meet this other one. How do you like dig into those to try to fix it?
Yeah. So obviously, as with any engineering discipline, documentation is very important. So if something goes wrong in the melt or something goes wrong at the forge or the heat treat, we try and have documentation for all of that. Even though the melt shop's like a different entity, they send us their documentation if something goes wrong, which is really nice. If nothing shows up in the documentation, we have you saw the filing cabinets outside. We have like 3 like massive filing cabinets just filled with historical documents about all these alloys we've worked with, all the trials and all the problems we've run into. So we'll kind of use our historical data and any documentation we have about what already could have gone wrong to determine if that was the root cause.
Since you've been at Elwood for a little while, you started getting your master's degree. How did you decide that that was something that you wanted to do, or how did you decide the timing on that?
Yeah. So that was actually one of the classes I took at Penn State was a MatSE 421. I don't think it's being offered anymore, but it was a thermal properties of materials taught by Dr. Wolf. And during the last class, he kind of, like went around and was like, yeah, what are your plans after college? Since we were all juniors or seniors, so it was time to start thinking about that question. And I mean, just from talking to him a little bit about grad school and stuff like that, I mean, he seemed to think it was really worth going to grad school. He even tried to urge me, he was like, don't go into industry yet, just go into grad school. But so that's where I kind of got the idea that one of my bucket list items was going to be like, hey, I know I want to do industry. I had 2 internships already. I know I really like it. But, I'm going to try and get my graduate school, through the company I work for. And working at Elwood, I saw a couple of my coworkers, my manager even did that same program where he got his master's degree through Elwood. And it was just kind of something I always wanted to do.
That's really nice. And it's nice when it works out nicely like that for you.
Yeah.
How do you find the balance is when you're working on your master's degree and continuing your work with Elwood?
It's definitely not as easy as it sounds. Because, I mean, I've only just started, so it hasn't gotten too bad yet. But it's just like once a week having to go down to the city, because I'm taking in-person classes, is already a lot because that basically takes out a day right there. And then all the homework and the assignments and the exams coming up that I also have to prepare for on top of doing stuff for work. It's definitely a juggling act. But I feel like you get some of those skills in college. I mean, that's a big part of college. I mean, because you got 5 different classes you're taking, and each one of those classes has homeworks they want you to do, assignments they want you to do, and exams they want you to do. So as long as you develop those good time management qualities during college, you should be fine to take on whatever time management challenges you have inside of work and outside of it too.
Nice. Then are some of the skills that you learned while being at Penn State coming in handy? Are they proving useful at Elwood and with this master's program?
Yeah, they definitely are. I'd say the 2 biggest skills that Penn State taught me are, one, just the metallurgy background. Because metallurgy is different from other engineering fields. Because, I mean, you still need to think critically, like I was saying earlier. You still need to have that engineering mindset to try and solve those problems. But you kind of go about it in a different way, especially if you're doing a failure analysis, for example. You got to have that scientific background to know when you're looking at something in the SEM or when you're etching something and looking at it in the scope. You got to have the wherewithal to say, oh, that phase is weird. That shouldn't be there. Why is that there? This is oxidizing weird. Or this void is this shaped. What does that mean? Where did it come from? So just that metallurgy background that Penn State provides is super, super important when you're going for a metallurgical engineer role. And the other part, Penn State, especially in the junior and senior year classes, they teach you how to be confident, which is such an important skill in engineering. When you're either, giving a presentation to your fellow metallurgical team, or you're writing a proposal to go to grad school to the president of your company, or even after you do a failure analysis. If you're not confident in presenting your results, presenting your value, presenting in general, you're not going to go as far as you want to go. And that's something I think Penn State really, really tries to drive into their students. Like, I'm sure you've seen it with some of your classes, like the project class junior year and
Yeah.
capstone senior year.
What advice would you have for a first-year student?
Yeah, so I mean, when you're a first year, you're coming in and you still don't entirely have an idea of what engineering is yet, like what it means to be an engineer, unless you had like some close connections to engineers, like I know you did. But even then, it's still kind of abstract, I feel like. So I mean, when you're a first year student, my biggest piece of advice would be, one, start to make those connections. Normally, your seminar professor, if you're in material science, I know there's a special material science freshman seminar, make a connection with them. Like, even if it seems like, stupid or meaningless, you might have him or her somewhere else down the line. You'll be like, oh, doctor, I remember you from freshman seminar, and they'll remember you too. And just, always making those connections, and also always taking classes seriously, always trying to get as much as you can out of them. Because, I mean, that's going to be the base of your knowledge right there. So, you don't have any connections yet, start making those connections, because they're going to help you down the line. And start off college on the right foot. Take everything seriously, because that's only going to help you in the long run.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. When you're here at Penn State, you receive sort of the base knowledge for material science, for metallurgy. How do you feel like that has prepared you for your job?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like in every kind of level I've been at so far in my job, whether that just be applying, just starting out, and then kind of where I'm at now, like I'm a year and some change in, so I'm not experienced, but I'm into the job at this point. So it's helped me at every stage there. So first off, when I'm just applying for a job and going for interviews, these companies, I mean, when they're hiring a metallurgist, they want someone who knows their stuff. So oftentimes there's a technical component for that. And Dr. Robinson really drilled in the iron carbon phase diagram in MatSE 427. And of course, I mean, that technical interview, 90% of it was the iron carbon phase diagram and just making sure you knew what happened at what temperature. So that's already, I mean, you got the job because of your Penn State background right there, which is already a huge plus. And then just getting into a job. Again, you're new, it's your first week or something. You may have interned before, but this is like a full-time position. So you're trying to absorb as much knowledge as you can, as quickly as you can, so you can start being useful to your company. And when you got all these terms flying around you and you got all these different, alloys that you're working with, it's so helpful to have that background at Penn State, kind of say like, oh yeah, like I've heard of this stainless alloy, or like, oh, I recognize this diagram, or like, yeah, I know how to do this and this in the lab, like from classes. So when you're just starting out, the Penn State background kind of gives you like a foundation to stand on while you're building more of a foundation through the experience at your job.
Then for students who have made it through their time here at Penn State and they're about to finish their degree, do you have any advice for them, whether they're going into industry or grad school?
Yeah. So I will say, first off, I know the decision between industry and grad school is a tough one. I've known, many of my friends at Penn State when I was still here, they were struggling with that choice, because it was either, go to grad school, further your education, maybe even get a PhD, and then come out to possibly a higher paying job, and you're doing what you love if you like grad school and your PhD. You're going to school more, you're learning more, which is really appealing to some people. And then other people might say, well, like, I had an internship or two like me, and I really liked what I did there, so I'm just going to go right into industry. And a lot of that's just personal preference and knowing yourself. If you're someone who really likes the academia side, then by all means, and if you have connections to a few research professors at whatever school you're applying to, by all means, yeah, go for that graduate degree, go for that PhD, because it's going to be more hard work in the short term, it's going to be more debt in the short term, but you're going to come out of it more qualified, you're going to come out of it with a better mindset for working, and you're going to come out of it with more knowledge in your field, which is ultimately going to lead to a better position, and you're going to be able to pay that debt down a lot faster. If you go into industry and you really like industry, obviously, I mean, Penn State's going to give you the opportunity with all the career fairs, all the connections that you made all of your fellow students that you already know who might already have jobs. It's going to give you a really good opportunity to get out there and get a really good paying job already, start paying that down. And then in terms of, what else to do after you graduate, one of the things that I didn't think about until I got to my job, and then a coworker told me about it, join a professional society. If you want some professional development, if you want some leadership experience, professional society is the easiest way to do that. I'm a part of ASM right now. I'm a member of the Pittsburgh board, and I'm also a member of the Emerging Professional Committee, which is a national level committee for ASM. And I've done anything from help the Pittsburgh chapter set up their LinkedIn page to set up the Young Professionals Night for the ASM Pittsburgh chapter. And I'm even organizing a symposium for ASM's International Conference in Detroit right now. And it's been really stressful. It has not been an easy learning curve, but I'm getting it done. And more importantly, I'm making a lot of connections and I'm learning so much about what it takes to be a leader along the way. So yeah, that's another big thing. Definitely see what professional society is near you, join them, and just ask what you can do, because they'll have something for you to do.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. While you were here, did you have any favorite memories that you made?
Yeah, I did. So I think what really made my college experience, and you always hear people talking about college it's going to be the best 4 years of your life. You're going to do a bunch of crazy stuff in college. And my roommates in my apartment really made that happen for me. I say it to a bunch of people, I'll never live with a better group of people in my life. That's how good they were. And it was such a small, nothing thing, but it really sticks in my head as just the core identity of our apartment, kind of what it represents. But there was one day near the end of my senior year where it was the first super nice day after winter. We did Survivor nights every Wednesday when Survivor aired, so we had a life-size cardboard cutout of Jeff Probst in our apartment. And we also had an inflatable palm tree to kind of add to that vibe.
Oh, fun.
So there was one day we just decided, we were hey, it's really nice. Our apartment has a yard. Let's just go set up some lawn chairs, set up Jeff Probst outside, set up the tree outside, and we'll just listen to some music. And I think we were out there for a good 3-4 hours just talking to each other about just everything that happened over the past 3 years. But
that's fun.
Yeah, that's probably one of my warmest memories of State College.